brothers, who later married into the Pabst family, who then sold these caves to Frederick Miller along with the Plank Road Brewery in 1855. So these are the oldest standing structures here in Miller Valley. Now, at one point, these caves were used to house the handmade barrels of our famous brew as they waited for delivery. And then modern refrigeration was invented in 1905, so the caves stopped being used. Now, at one point, there were 10 chambers to these caves that extended up to 600 feet into the hills surrounding us. And they stood at a standard of 15 feet wide by 16 feet high, like this chamber is. Now, there were some workers who did spend a lot of time rounding these caves, so I've highlighted a figure in front of the mural, and that man was called a cooper. Coopers were the people who actually handmade those beer barrels so we could store our wonderful beer. And Frederick Miller was actually successful enough to own and operate his own cooper shop here in Miller Valley. Now, of course, he's not to be confused with the other men also featured in the mural. Those men were called handlers, and when they weren't on their breaks, they were in and out of these caves, loading up wagons with the beer barrels that were filled to the brim, and they were distributed throughout the Milwaukee and southeastern Wisconsin areas. But of course, not all the beer did leave these caves. There was always plenty left over for Frederick Miller and his own personal celebrations, so I did promise you a special guest, and I'd like to introduce to you the ghost of Frederick Miller himself.
I do enjoy my beer garden. The perfect place for my family and friends to enjoy the fruits of our labor. There were many good beer gardens in Germany, it is true, but I am proud to say ours is the best in Milwaukee. Oh, perhaps I should introduce myself. I am Frederick Miller. And you are standing in my famous caves. I must apologize for the temperature. It is a bit cool, to be sure, but it is all by design. You see here, 60 feet underground, my specially crafted beer stays perfectly cool all the year round. That is just the sound of the ice shifting around us. There are literally tons of ice lining the chambers of these walls. Each winter, we harvest thousands of pounds of ice from Milwaukee Lake as well as other area lakes and ponds, and then pack these caves solid, keeping my beer fresh, cool, even on the hottest summer days. After all, I have to protect my investment. It's 75 cents a ton for this special ice. But I'm sure you will agree, it is worth it. Now, within these walls, we can store up to 12,000 barrels of Miller beer. Back in Germany, I never could have dreamed of such value. But isn't that why people come to America? To make such dreams come true. I take great pride in the beer we store in these caves. Even when we were a very small brewery, we make the very best beer. It is my motto, quality, uncompromising and unchanging. As we grew, I realized that we were not only brewing beer, we were creating memories, the camaraderie, the moments in life that made just a little better when friends shared our Miller beer. And I understand that now for these moments, Miller time. I'm honored that those moments on our beer still bear the Miller name. It's time for me to get back to my family and to party. You? I think you know what time it is. Prost!
That's right, folks, you heard the man. It is just about that time. Now, before we go, I'd just briefly like to show you a couple artifacts that are around this cave. And more impressively, if you look at the display case front and center, that was actually Frederick Miller's own personal collection of his competitor's beer. So you probably don't recognize most of the brands in there, and that's for a good reason, because during the Prohibition between 1919 and 1933, a lot of those brands did go out of business, but Miller was able to survive that time by selling malts, near beers, and non-alcoholic drinks. So that does just about wrap up our tour. So that's where we'll go to the beer garden, and that's where you'll receive your 3 free samples. Your first sample will be of Miller Lite, and the remaining 2 samples will be anything of your choice of the 6 different beers we have on tap today. Now just make sure you have those wristbands out that you got in the beginning of the tour so that our servers can mark you off to keep track of how many samples we're giving out. And over there you'll also be able to view that welcome photo you took in the beginning of the tour. There are also some surveys if you enjoyed the tour. Again, my name is Lisa. If you didn't enjoy the tour, you can just bypass that step or, try again after you've had those 3 beers. You can head on over to the beer garden.